Hey, it's Stephanie. Welcome to the Funny Farm. Haha, just joking. Welcome to the podcast. I have the amazing Kelly Kendall on this morning, so thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
And what I love about having you on is you're another photographer, so I feel like we speak the same language, and you also grew up on a farm, a dairy farm.
Yeah, we have a lot of similarities that way.
Yeah, in Minnesota. I was here in Wisconsin. So how did you go from dairy farm in Minnesota to photographer in Sauk?
It's a good question. So I grew up on a dairy farm. I was in 4-H.
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah, we had the Junior Holstein Association in Minnesota as well. So I was in the Minnesota Junior Holstein. I did a lot of the agricultural things. I went to the University of Minnesota for agricultural marketing and communications. And I got here because I got a graphic design job actually in Baraboo. And I was doing graphic design work, advertising, things like that. At the time, back in the early 2000s, the U of M did not teach, Photoshop skills or anything. So I was self-taught. I taught myself the Adobe Suite. I taught myself all of that. And actually at the time it was Quark, which is pretty old school.
Yeah.
But I also had loved photography my whole life. And so that's how I got to Wisconsin. And then I have been here ever since doing graphic design work corporately for 15 years. And then in 2017, I went out on my own and started doing freelance graphic design and photography. And then in 2021, I opened my photography studio and just started going all in on the photography aspect of things. Yeah.
Actually, another is I opened my actual studio.
You did?
Yeah, and I thought it was crazy because it was in the middle of COVID.
People said, why are you opening a physical space?
Yeah.
But it was one of those, I feel like I manifested the studio in a way. I was looking for a space was available. There wasn't a for rent sign or anything on it, but I saw it was empty. And so I called and it was available and I jumped. It was a little scary, but I knew the style of photography that I wanted. And it's probably a similar story for you too, is that when you're in Wisconsin, you can do some outdoor stuff in nicer weather, but I wanted to do more portraiture. I wanted headshots. And I wanted something that was a controlled environment. So the studio helped me make that happen.
Yeah. Did you have to learn then studio lighting then, or did you already know that?
I had learned studio lighting through my corporate because I was doing headshots for the company that I was working for, essentially back in I think it was maybe 2012, 2013.
Okay.
They said, hey, we want you to take headshots of all 300 of our employees. And I said, that's great, but I need to learn how to do it first. And what I've learned about myself over the years is I will teach myself, or I'm self-taught in a lot of different things, which for a while I thought was a negative. I was kind of not necessarily ashamed, but I didn't have the schooling for it, right? I didn't have the degree. I taught myself. And now I realize that teaching yourself is really a strength. It's a benefit because it shows that you can take an idea and teach yourself and then run with it. So I knew some studio lighting, but you're always learning.
Yeah.
Learning new ideas, things, tweaking ideas. So when I got the studio, I wanted to bring it all in-house. So I found a professional hair and makeup artist. I guide them through the whole photo shoot. But what I was finding is that when I have the studio, it's more than just taking pictures of people. It ends up being having this connection, having this moment. And I just started realizing that I love showing people what they look like from my side of the lens instead of just, taking a quick photo of them and leaving. I was finding that we were having more of a moment together. So that's what I've been loving about the studio, is that what I thought was going to be taking photos of people in the very beginning, back in the early 2012, 2013, has now evolved into showing people what they look like from my perspective and helping them feel seen and appreciated and understood.
I feel that. when I got my studio too, I don't have any more, but the conversations that I had, and that's like I will never forget, because it was so much more than just coming in for photos. It was conversations. It was, and I too had a couple different hair and makeup artists I work with, and then they're included. It's just, it's such a beautiful, beautiful thing to be a portrait.
I think one of the things I didn't realize was that, so I was a writer in college. I interned with a magazine. I loved writing feature stories.
Okay.
And now essentially I get to be a person that tells people stories, but in a visual sense instead of just a writing, author with the written word. And I love it. And that's what I love about the people that walk in. Everybody has a story.
Mm-hmm.
They might not think they have a story, but everyone does. And it's cool and it's inspiring. And I think it's so interesting to sit down with people and take a moment and say, look what you've done. Look where you are. And look where you've gotten from in life, right? So it's more than just, I need headshots for LinkedIn or something else. Even like yesterday, I had a woman who came in for headshots. And in the brief, this was a shorter session, but I said, close your eyes and think of your happy place. Like, where's a place that brings you joy? Because when you stop and think about that, it changes your whole spirit. It changes your whole feeling of your body. You can feel it in the room and you can see it in people's photos. And that's what I love.
Yeah, I do that even. A lot of the shoots I do, I go on location and wonder. But even in those couple minutes that I have, if they're super, stressed, it's like just close your eyes and what do you love the most? And it's puppies or kids or both. But it goes along with this law of attraction thing. I totally do that. When you take a second and you feel joy and peace, you're going to attract that in. So if you have that feeling in a photograph and somebody else sees that photograph, they're going to feel the energy too. So it's like spreading joy throughout.
Yeah, I think each of us has, obviously you can vibrate on a different level of vibration like you're talking about. If we can get to that higher vibrational level, especially in photos, but just in life in general,
Mm-hmm.
I think you're right. People can be attracted to that vibrational feeling. Everyone wants to essentially feel good. Everyone wants to realize their highest self and just take a moment and honor that.
Yeah. And I know this is going to lead to something I wasn't sure we were going to talk about, but we're going to talk about AI headshots in it because a lot of people on LinkedIn are using them. And I can tell right away when they're AI because no, there's no flaws. It's like a smooth skin. And I really feel like we're doing our clients by posting these AI photos. They're not really us. And at the end of the day, we're not selling photography, right? Or we're not selling, we're selling else.
Yeah, I think there's something, the novelty of AI, right? You get to see yourself in essentially what AI would want you or guess you to look like. But what I like about having an in-person photo shoot is that ultimately I'm not capturing what you look like. I'm not capturing the outside physical. Technically I am. But what I really want to capture is what you are inside, your spark, what makes you you. If you want to look relaxed and friendly, I think it goes more than just what you look like on the outside. So AI images can look kind of like you, but do they feel like you? And I think that's what I really like about having people come in for a photo shoot. I want to capture what you feel like.
You're doing it more like when you're talking about this, I feel like you're on your life, the dairy farm to college, the work, now you're work. And what do you think you were to plant a seed today and have it grow next, what would that?
In only a year.
We used to check on it in a year.
Okay.
And then
I find that really interesting. The question is great because a lot of times in the studio, my clients and I will talk about like, what advice would you give your past self, your 20-year-old self, right? And sometimes I'll say, what advice would your future self give you? And I realize that I've had to actually adjust that to like yourself 20 years in the future, because I think we can overestimate and underestimate what we can accomplish in different periods of time. So when I think about a year, how quickly a year can go sometimes, right? To answer your actual question, I would love to continue to build a collection of clients and relationships and capture them in visual form. So I would love to have more people come in, tell me their stories. Let's share those stories together, especially if they're women, just because I think it's our chance in a world that sometimes women's stories have been changed. I think it's our role to document those. Let's tell people stories. Let's tell the accurate, story of what's happening to people. And as I get to be in my mid-40s and you start talking about perimenopause, menopause, what advice would I give to some of the generations coming up behind me? What have I learned? What can I hope for them? I think if we start sharing our stories with each other and in a way that isn't so divisive on social media, it isn't an us against them. If we realize that once you start telling your story, we all have a lot more similar than we are different.
Yeah.
So if I can continue to do that in a visual form of taking their photos, but also in helping to share the stories that we talk about during the session, it's cool. It's like a little therapy session in a way. It's a day out where you can be your true self. I will capture you. I happen to have a camera in front of me. And we sit here kind of like this. We talk. We have fun. You get to show me your true self. You show me your spark. You let that person shine through, and I'll capture it for you. And then you can show other people. That's ultimately what my goal has been in the studio and what I'll continue to have it be.
Yeah. So just kind of, are you going to call it something different? Or are you just?
I think so. I mean, I think you've done essentially different campaigns, right? So what I would love to do is essentially kind of like a 40 over 40 campaign, an over 40 project where I take women over 40 and let's tell your stories. I have so many already that are great. Sharing them with people and having, once you realize if you start sharing people's stories, people will connect with you, and also showing what it's like to age the way that you age, right? Like this is what 60 is now. And this is what 50 is. And this is what you've accomplished. It's honoring what you've done. And also telling people your life is not done when you're 40. People are scared to turn 40. And then I turned 40 and I went, okay, this is pretty freeing. I love this. Like you get to this point and you go, all right, let's do it. Let's keep going.
Yeah.
And I think that is lost. People aren't talking about it. It's lost in society.
It's lost in society because there's so many different reasons. A lot of it has to be them, but it also has to do with, we're only there's a whole new type, that, our grandmas did. So we are leading the way to, yes, life isn't over at 40 and it's just beginning and there is no end. And when there is an end, a physical end, a death, I wanted to make sure that we're all at that finish line, cheering each other on. Like there's no reason not share other than just hasn't done before.
Yeah, I think a lot of the people that have come into the studio that are 40 and above, and you start hearing their stories, if they're not the trailblazer, a lot of times they are the trailblazer. Let's start there. Yeah. And they don't acknowledge it because they had one or maybe two mentors that were older than them. And they said, well, I'm not the one who did it. I had, this person and this mentor. But those mentors were almost the very first people, right? So you're right. We're in this generation of transition. My mom's generation was, when you hear about the fact that women couldn't have a credit card or a bank loan or things like that, until in the mid 70s, just what has been evolving in the last few generations. So I think it's important for us to take a moment and acknowledge what's changed from then to now, and also what can happen in the future. So it's really cool to hear people's stories of, breaking the glass ceiling of C-suite executives, being the first executive on a corporate level, military, some of higher ranking military women, and the struggles that they've had to go through. There's just all these stories. And even if it's not on a grand scale, even just smaller, where you are now, maybe this woman is the breadwinner in her family, where before in past generations, that was not seen upon, like that wasn't as popular, right? Or wasn't as accepted. Mm-hmm. And people who are willing to make that change in their 40s and say, you know what, my life isn't what I thought it was going to be. I'm going to change.
Yeah.
I'm going to start over.
And I think that, obviously, I think this, but portraits are such a part of honoring our journey. And we don't have photos of ourselves to pass down to our children. I have a picture up there. You can see great grandma. She's holding a lamb randomly, and that gives me. And we are really hard to not getting in front of the camera, which I know is another of your something you had to overcome.
Correct. Yeah.
Is so that your kids know that you were there. You're not always behind the camera, you're in front.
I think I'm not alone in the fact that a lot of people are more comfortable being behind the camera. Mm-hmm. I just do it as my job, right? So I got very comfortable being behind the camera because as I was growing up, I was really tall. I was awkward. I never really felt like I fit in just because I was one of the taller girls. And, I was always in the back row of class pictures and everything, right? So basketball was essentially my way to make my body feel like it had a purpose. And then in my 20s, I did some therapy. I went to therapy. I was trying to heal that part of myself. But as you know, when you start a business, all of those things that you thought had healed come flooding back. Because if they aren't truly healed, you start to realize as business, as entrepreneurs and business owners, you have to start putting yourself out there on social media. You have to start selling yourself and your work, no matter what that is. For us, it's creative. For other people, it may be a skill, a trade, a service, something. And if you can't have the separation between your self-worth and your service or your product, it's going to be challenging because when you have people tell you no, you'll take it as a personal rejection instead of a thought of, oh, that client wasn't my client. Right. And I think that's something that's challenging to learn. So as I was starting to learn that, you have to separate, yes, it's, it's our art and it's our photography, but in the end, it's a service that I'm providing. And if someone tells me no, then we weren't meant to work together.
Yeah. And it's the same. I've had to work through a lot of this stuff too in relationships. And I mean, be driving down the street and get hit by a car. Okay, is that your fault? Is that doesn't work? We as women especially, we put all these things that happen to us, like a no or I don't love you, but whatever, is something that we've done wrong. And in a way, it's empowering because we have to all that shit and come out on top. And I mean, I guess that's it. That's empowering. We take these hard things like the no's, and we take the hard things like I have to start over at 45 because I just built this. And we use it as our set of, oh, shoot, I guess I'm not. And I know you have a little bit of a story about hypnotherapy and how that kind of come about. And I've never done it, so I'd like to hear more about that.
I do. Yeah. So when I was going through starting my business and having to face the fact of showing up on camera. So I had to go get branding photos done. I went to a couple of photographers, very nice people. They were good photographers. But when I got the images back, I didn't like them. I was starting to nitpick everything apart, whether it's, I broke my nose, so I have a bump in my nose, my forehead's too big, anything. Everybody has, there are certain things that you immediately gravitate toward when you look at a photo of yourself. And the more I did that, the more I thought, I guess I'm just not photogenic as a photographer. Right. Everyone, like, honestly, I always tell people it's not your job to be photogenic because everyone deserves to exist in photos. And it's my job to help you show who you are, because that's what being photogenic is in my mind. It's the fact that you can show up in a photo. So I wasn't seeing myself accurately. I started my business, and it was still right around that time where I was still happy to take other people's photos, but I wasn't comfortable being in front of the camera myself as much. It was getting better because I was helping coach people through it, and I was seeing the impact that it was having. And finally I said, listen, I have to face this. I have to figure out what is holding me back. And so I had a client that's now a friend say, try hypnotherapy. So I found a hypnotherapist in Madison that's fantastic. And I showed up. She taught me essentially, you spend the first couple sessions learning what it's like to relax enough to be hypnotized. And when it's hypnotized, it's not like what you think of a show, a hypnotist or anything that you would go to.
Like a frog.
Correct. Right. It's a safe space, especially if you find a hypnotherapist that's safe. And you essentially, what you're doing is shutting off your conscious brain so that your subconscious can come through. And that way you can find what stories your subconscious believes, and you can go back. Essentially what I do is I go back as my older self, as my adult self, and heal different aspects of my life that are currently still unhealed.
Mm-hmm.
I give myself what I wish I would have received at the time. So it's not about blaming other people. It's not, a victim, anything like that. It can work with what's called like what people call big T traumas and little T traumas. Everybody has these different things that have happened in their life. But what you can go back and you can talk to your younger self, say, okay, what did you need? Essentially sanding off the edges of painful memories. The memories are still there, but you've worked toward healing them and accepting what's happened to you. And I found that the more that I did that, the more that I was embracing who I truly am, of the person that I am now. And with each session, I was healing myself to the point I decided I need to face it. I gave myself my own session, essentially. I had my hair and makeup artist do my hair and makeup. That felt like me. I jumped in front of the camera. I did goofy poses because they were me, not because I was acting out, but because I did current facial expressions. We laughed. I love laughing. All of those looks. And I looked at the photos afterward. I turned them into black and white. I did zero retouching, no Photoshop work. You could see any line that I had on my face. And I loved them. I absolutely loved them. And I look at that point, I get emotional sometimes because it was the first time in a really long time that I was accepting myself. And it's not that the other photos were bad. I actually looked back on those and I like those now too, but I was healing myself. I was seeing what other people saw when they looked at me. And I am so grateful for that work. And I'm so grateful for hypnotherapy because of that. And I think that that's really common. And I was the photographer. You're like, I was going through this.
Right. Well, I think sometimes we want to be the person that our young, we become the person in order to. And I guess I do something similar called body therapist, and it's pinpointing healing within the body, and a scale of 1 to 10. How does that? And then this is the pointer. You follow the eye movement, or you follow with your eyes where you feel it most. And then work. Just go in and release the so that you can see it as it's a really interesting way to heal. Now, one session I did, I was able to release so much of this shame that I felt being a teen mom. And it released in such a way that it almost felt like it broke off. Like I'm a planet, and so the planet broke off on its journey. It was so powerful that weekend. I mean, I had migraine. My joints were swollen, and it was a huge, and I didn't even know. So it's very similar that we have to take this time because we're doing it for a reason. We don't know why. But I feel like our inner guide is like, you need to go do it right now. Then and proceed on your. We have to get through together because you don't feel alone in it. And it's being right. Like at the beginning of your journey, and now you're part of a community, part of healing.
I think I'm okay with myself.
Yeah.
So that's the first thing, right? Because how am I expected to help other people or walk with other people if I can't face myself first? So if we heal ourselves and we start to accept ourselves, then everything else changes. Then you start seeing the world through the eyes of a person who has accepted herself. Mm-hmm. You start seeing other people through the eyes of this accepted person. And you start to realize that the world that we're walking through, everybody has their own filters and biases and limitations, right? We're all essentially just little kids, right? Who I would say need a hug. Not everyone's a hugger, but everyone is essentially a little kid. And some of us are able to go back and heal that part of us, and other people aren't ready to face that yet. And when you start seeing the world through the fact that a lot of us are little kids, then you have more compassion for people.
Exactly.
And you start looking for a connection point. And then from there, you can have those discussions that might be challenging, that might be, limiting. But you're able to sit without that extra baggage and have in-depth conversations.
Probably right now.
I was just thinking that.
And I do feel that the more authentic we are with ourselves, the more pure our life. As all of a sudden, and we start. And honestly, the weirdest thing that mine was right. And I know this fish life thing in Minnesota too.
It was not as much. No. So when I moved here, I was not into the fish fry culture, but I mean, I've been here long enough now where it's part of life.
Probably the follower, but I don't really appreciate a fish fry. However, it's what my parents did. It's what everybody does on a Friday night. They go out for fish, and then one day, like, I don't even really like fish fry. Like, why do I, once you stop doing what other people are doing, you question, why am I doing that? All of a sudden, then something else comes. And when you follow that pureness, that passion, things else follow that.
I think the world would be a boring place if we were all the same.
Yeah.
And I know sometimes that's hard when you're on social media and you're wanting to emulate something.
Yeah.
But if you truly are okay with yourself and you are okay with expressing who you are, we each have talents and gifts that we were meant to share in this world.
Yeah.
We are all different. And that's what makes us great. As long as we're doing it in a way that is authentic to us and are able to essentially like lift the vibration of the whole world, right?
Right.
So I think it's doing us a disservice if everyone looks the same, acts the same, feels the same, goes to fish fries the same. If you don't want to, that's cool. Like, that's who you are. And I think it's that fight against it that makes you exhausted.
Yes. Yeah. Oh my God. I was just listening to that this morning, that they're going to be my TikToks for the day. You have to follow the flow, and you have to be you. If your life is exhausting, it means you're not living. And that's hard truth to know. But I've also been there. And during my second marriage, especially towards the end, I couldn't get out of bed. I get so exhausted before I even woke up. And I looked around and I saw everything, looked at an cars in the driveway, we had 3 businesses. And I couldn't understand why I was feeling this way, what was wrong with that. I couldn't just be happy. And I had to follow that to a place, deep regret. I had been such a people pleaser that I was just living a life trying to make, and I think a lot of women do that, and they don't realize tremendous amount of courage to putting in boundaries and facing these unknowns, because all you've done is to try as a people please. And you think it's going to be really hard, and it is, those first few steps, but then you kind of get it through, and Surfer carries you forever. And then you look back and people will tell you you're really courageous. That wasn't that hard. You know? But the first few steps are that how you, like, life doesn't have to be.
I think that happens in people's lives in different ways. And I think in a way that can equate to when people leave a job, starting a business, anything that's unknown, right? It's that unknown part that can be really scary. But the fact that you were willing to take the risk and to listen to what you wanted shows that you were able to move forward and listen to who you were. Mm-hmm. And that's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it is amazing. And it's amazing that there's so many steps that we've been taught to feel shame about that. And there's no shame in it following.
The only shame that, like, the reason we're feeling shame is because it's not fitting into the parameters that we've been told, right?
Right.
So if you don't fit into what you've been told, you feel like you're on the outside. Mm-hmm. You don't fit in. You feel uncomfortable. And I love that more and more people are willing to question, why are those the parameters? Why does that have to be the way that things are? Mm-hmm. I just think I love cheering people on that way.
Same. And in my mind, there's no other way to live a life. And it doesn't have to always be that. You can always make a choice to refine those feelings.
I think it's hard when you try to do it alone too, or you feel like you're alone. I think it takes people, surrounding yourself with other people who can encourage you. And it might not necessarily be the people that came with you and got you to that place. But I think it's important for people to surround themselves, people who are encouraging and loving and have your best interests in mind.
Yeah. And for me, for a long time, it's just podcasts. It's just listening to other people. I hadn't had the support system built around me, because these are like the highest degree possible. And you start putting boundaries. Oops. Well, they signed up for, so even in those alone, something that's such I get out there.
One more voice to make you feel like you're not alone in the world.
Right. Is there anything else and I would love to know, I would love to have my listeners know how they can book you, get a hold of you.
When if I just take a moment to think if there's anything that's like, okay, I'm just going to take a moment and think what's coming in for me to, I know this was a big pause. I am feeling emotions in a happy way, because I'm just so grateful that you and I were able to sit down together and have this conversation. And the fact that we can, this doesn't have to even be part of it. It's just more of the fact of like, I'm just so grateful to not be alone in different aspects of like photography, business, right? But it's so cool. Like, it's so lonely being a business owner sometimes. And I started this business, and a lot of times I just wanted to keep my head down and do my work and not really ruffle the boat of anybody. Ruffle the boat, that's not a phrase. But I just wanted to do my work and try it and not get anyone, angry at me or be on anyone's radar. I just kind of wanted to do my thing. And then the more I started reaching out and talking to other photographers in the area and meeting people, I started to realize that it's not a competition, and we're all doing our life's work, right? Like we're all trying to essentially feel like you have a feeling in your soul. At least that's for me. And I can't not do it. I want people to feel connected. I don't want people to feel alone. My number one thing I would tell people, and I tell this to people on social media a lot because I think we all need to hear it. You are worthy as you are. You are worthy. You do not need to prove your worthiness. You don't need to prove anything, actually. You are loved. If you feel like you're not loved, you are loved, and you matter. You matter in this world. Even if it doesn't feel like it sometimes, you matter. And if I could get a billboard, I would put, you are loved, you are worthy, you matter. Just to remind people that they deserve to be in this world, that they deserve to exist. And that if we all felt that way, then I think everyone's soul would feel better. If we would take away some of the pain of the loneliness and feeling like you don't fit in. So ultimately, I love hugs. I would give people a hug. Just tell them, I see you and you matter. And whether that means stepping in front of a camera lens or taking the step to showing your true self in your life, whatever that is take a moment, ask yourself, what stories have you been telling yourself from the past? Are they true? Are they fact? And if not, start to question, why do I believe these? And what can I change? See where your life brings you. Because we're not meant to be a filtered small version of ourselves. We're not meant to make ourselves small. We're meant to exist in a way that feels like us, in a way that our soul is meant to exist.
And it's give a question that you exist. You're worthy of making action. You're here. And even that when it's step from feeling like I don't belong to go back here.
Yeah, especially if your stories are negative. If your stories are negative, start to question, why do I believe that? And then think of, how can I change that? So for instance, mine being, I'm not photogenic, moving it more to a neutral than to a positive. I deserve to exist in photos. Everyone deserves to exist in photos. So just starting to change that narrative is one small step to start embracing who you are. And for me, that was life-changing.
And what's your favorite?
I am on Instagram and Facebook at Kelly Kendall Studios. I have Kelly Kendall Studios in Prairie du Sac is my photography studio. But honestly, I love when people connect with me on social media. I always say I will cheer you on, and I mean it, because I think that there's something to be said about having a positive connection with people. So Instagram and Facebook are two great ways, and I will cheer you on and connect with you there.
If it cheer you.
No, but so I'm a basketball coach.
Okay.
Oh, a fifth grade basketball coach. And I am trying to change the narrative that basketball coaches have to be angry and negative all the time, right? I take my therapy and I show it to 10 and 11-year-old boys that, I tell them it's okay to cry, feel it for 90 seconds and then move on. It's okay to feel feelings, and it's okay to have a wide range of emotions more than just anger or frustration. You can be happy, you can be joyful, you can be sad, you can be frustrated. Those emotions are available to all of us. So if I were to cheer like that, essentially it's giving the kids fist bumps at the end of practice and telling them that I see them and I encourage them.
You.
I see you too, friend.